Let's come on stage. Let's see how we're sounding. Let's see how we're sounding. Hopefully everything is good. Hopefully everyone is having a fantastic evening. This is Elvin Israel, and this is one of your favorite biblical instructors. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try to start doing more live videos. Okay, there we go. All right, we're sounding good. I'm going to start doing more live videos, because I think doing the live videos actually helps out a little bit more with the interaction and etc. Get people to start talking more. Uh, what I'm going to discuss tonight is the redemption that occurred first century. Me coming from the full preterist perspective, which means that I teach and I stand on the teaching that all biblical prophecies have been fulfilled. Every single biblical prophecy has reached its fulfillment. And we're living in the age after the biblical prophecies were supposed to be fulfilled. We're living in that kingdom age. But a lot of the pushback or a lot of the problems that we receive is because people have a tendency to not understand the layout of the Bible and how the Bible is supposed to be understood. So this is what this channel is dedicated to do. It's dedicated to teach the understanding of how all biblical prophecies have been fulfilled and give you some nuances that you can research and look at on your own to come to a similar conclusion that we have reached. All right. I'm not going to hold you guys up. I'm going to start breaking it down right now. Redemption that occurred first century. All right. So, first of all, we have to understand what was one of the major themes that was spoken of in the Bible, especially through prophet Isaiah, which is redemption. All right. So, we're talking about the exchange of a price to redeem someone or to get them out of a lower condition, which in the Bible and etc. is dealing with slavery. To get these people out of slavery, right? Now, if we look at, and give me 1 second to this is I just thought of two more biblical verses that we can look at. Dealing with redemption. Okay. Let me see here. Sorry about that, y'all. It just came in my mind. It just came in my mind. All right, I think we got it right here. I think all praises to the most high. Sometimes, he hit you with certain information that you don't think about until it's game time. It kind of make you look unorganized sometimes, but it is what it is. All right, so let's go look at one of the main problems that we had, or that Isaiah speaks of. We're going to go to Isaiah 50, 1 and 2. Isaiah chapter 50, verses 1 and 2. And it reads this: Thus says the Lord. In fact, let me read from the, let's see if I can read from the Brenton. Thus saith the Lord, of what kind is your mother's bill of divorcement, by which I put her away? Or to which debtor have I sold you? Behold, ye are sold for your sins, and for your iniquities have I put your mother away. Why did I come, and there was no man? Why did I call, and there was none to hearken? Is not my hand strong to redeem, or can I not deliver? Behold, by my rebuke I will dry up the sea, and make rivers a wilderness, and their fish shall be dried up, because there is no water, and shall die for thirst. That's that second Exodus motif, him drying up the river, drying up the sea, allowing them to walk through, and etc. And he has the power to do that. But regardless, you see right here, we got the Lord speaking to, or Isaiah giving a message to the children of Israel, but this is the Lord speaking to the children of Israel. And he's explaining to his son. See, I got to make all of this clear of what's going on, because some of these terms are, they don't get brought out enough, or these points don't get made enough for people to understand the flow of the Bible. So he's speaking to his sons, right? His sons and daughters. And he's telling them how he divorced their mother. And we know that that feminine aspect could be related to Jerusalem and etc. But regardless, or you could say to the tribes, however you want to look at it. The point is they were divorced, right? He's saying that, what kind of divorce was it that you have went through, right? And pretty much he's saying that even though you're divorced, there's going to be a way that you can return if you turn to me. So he's asking them, sort of like some rhetorical questions, pretty much. He's like, what kind of debtor can I sell you to, right? Show me your mother's bill of divorce. Show me. Show me all of these things. Don't you know that there's nothing too hard for me? So he's saying that, you know, you guys got to look at things from more of a heavenly perspective than an earthly perspective. And you will start understanding my work and my requirements more. But he explained to them, you guys have been sold for your sins. I put your mother away because of the iniquities she produced. That's the only reason why we don't have a relationship. So the first question is, what type of transaction can this be? Right? Because the Lord sold them. But who did he sell them to? What was the dowry? What was the price that was given or exchanged? Because the Lord don't need money. So what was exchanged? These things can be thought about. So then we go to Isaiah 52. Isaiah 52, 1 through 3. Awake, awake, Zion. Put on thy strength, O Zion. And thou put on thy glory, Jerusalem, the holy city. there shall no more pass through thee the uncircumcised and unclean. Shake off the dust and arise. That's that Daniel 12. That's that resurrection language. Shake off the dust and arise. Sit down, Jerusalem. Put off the band off of thy neck, captive daughter of Zion. For thus said the Lord, you have been sold for naught, and ye shall not be ransomed with silver. So that's the Britain. Let's see if we can get a little bit more clearer verse from the JPS, the Jewish Publication Society. For thus said the Lord, ye were sold for naught, and ye shall be redeemed without money. So he's explaining that they were sold without money. They're going to be redeemed without money. They were sold for their sins. So guess what they're going to be redeemed with? So you can draw a conclusion to understand how the Bible is operating, right? It's deep, it's layered until you turn to Christ, and then that veil is taken away. If they were sold because of sin, guess what they have to get rid of in order to be bought back, in order to be redeemed back? Guess what they had to get rid of? And look where that redemption, look how it's surrounded. Look what it's shrouded in. Resurrection language. Look what it say. Look. Shake thyself from the dust. Arise and sit down. That's resurrection language. That's your Daniel. Many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall arise or awake. Some to everlasting righteousness, some to shame and everlasting, some to everlasting righteousness, some to shame and everlasting contempt. The point is, we see that sin being taken away is surrounded by the language of redemption and resurrection. So if Isaiah is looking at the state of mankind dealing with sin and not sin, to be dealing with being sold and redeemed and resurrection, guess what? The apostles, Paul, the Messiah, guess what they're talking about when they start bringing up resurrection? See here, resurrection is surrounded by getting rid of sin, letting them be redeemed. But let's show you when Isaiah stated this was going to happen. Yes, indeed, Isaiah did, in fact, tell us when this was going to happen. If you go to Isaiah chapter 1, I'm going to read it from the Young's literal translation so you can get the literal words. This is what is stated. Zion in judgment is redeemed, and her captivity in righteousness. Let me read it again. So that's from the Young's literal translation. I'm going to read it from, let's see what we got here. Let's read it from, let's see what the Geneva say. Zion shall be redeemed in judgment. and they that return in her in justice. So Isaiah explained how Zion would be redeemed, would be bought back, would be once again under the yoke of righteousness, judgment. Now, why judgment? Why judgment? Well, let's look at how Isaiah explained this, I believe, in Isaiah 20. Let me see if this is 27. Isaiah 27, verse number 9. Therefore, by this shall the iniquity of Jacob be expiated. That's the JPS. Let's see what the Brenton said. Therefore shall the iniquity of Jacob be taken away. And this is his blessing, when I shall have taken away his sin, when they shall have broken to pieces all the stones of the altars as fine dust, and their trees shall not remain, and their idols shall be cut off as a thicket afar off. So it Isaiah is letting it be known that there was going to have to be some altars that was broken into pieces. And when the altars leave, then the iniquity of Jacob would be taken away. Then his sin will be taken away. Now, we just read how Jacob or Israel was going to be redeemed in judgment. And we read in Isaiah 52 how then that resurrection language would happen when Israel has been, quote unquote, bought back, has been redeemed, has been paid for. So there's something, this is what's going on. There's something in the land of Canaan that's causing Israel to stay in sin. And as long as they stay in sin, they could never be bought back. So the Lord is saying, I'm going to destroy that which is causing you guys to stay in sin. Now, I want to look at Josephus real fast so we can understand the process of redemption according to ancient Israel. And then we're going right back to the Bible. So this is the process of redemption. This is Antiquity of the Jews, Book 12, Chapter 2, Section 3. This is how one was redeemed from slavery. So this is an example right here. It says this: a copy of which decree I have determined to preserve, that the magnanimity of this king may be known. Its contents were as follows: let all those who were soldiers under our father, and who, when they overran Syria and Phoenicia and laid waste Judea, took the Jews captives and made them slaves and brought them into our cities and into this country, and then sold them, as also those that were in my kingdom before them. And if there be any that have been lately brought thither and made free by those that possess them, and let them accept of 120 drachmae for every slave, and let the soldiers receive this redemption money with their pay, but the rest out of the king's treasure. For I suppose that they were made captives without our father's consent and against equity, and that their country was harassed by the insolence of the soldiers, and by that removing them into Egypt, the soldiers have made a great profit by them. So what's happening is the Jews were overran, taken slave, taken captive, and the ones that was over them sold them to other people or did whatever they wanted to the Jews. So now you got this king coming in, and he's giving the ones that took them captive money to set the slaves free. The king is coming in and saying, look at all of the captives. Let me pay you off so they can go free and return back to their own land. That's how redemption from slavery worked in the ancient world. So now let's look how the Bible explains the redemption that the Spirit was going to do. So we see how earthly redemption worked. So let's see what's going on with spiritual redemption and what had to occur. First thing first, we find out that the Jews themselves were sold, and it was a promise that they would be redeemed without money. All right. So we're going to go to John. John chapter 8. John chapter 8, and we're going to start at verse number, let me see here. Let's start at verse 31. So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed him, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples. So that means that they had to continually do the things Jesus asked them to do. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. They answered him, we are offspring of Abraham and have not been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free? Now, we know that the Jews had been slaves throughout many captivities by the time we hit first century. So we have to understand this is a narrative written for the audience to understand a specific point. So this isn't supposed to be historically accurate. This is the author explaining this narrative for a specific point for his audience to understand what the Messiah was trying to teach. So don't look at this for historical accuracy. Look at this for spiritual accuracy. So here we go. They answered him, "We are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free?" Jesus answered them, "Truly, truly." So when they say it twice, that means that it has all of the power, all of the seriousness that can be given. "Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin." So he's talking to the people that believe on him. He's explaining to them, if you practice sin, you are a slave to sin. Now, John stated it another way. See, that's how Christ stated it. Let's see how John stated it. 1 John 3:8. Whoever makes a practice of sinning is of the devil, for the devil has been sinning from the beginning. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. So now we should understand what's being stated. So now what Christ stated in John 8 was John 8, verse 34. Whoever practices sin is a slave to sin. AKA, whoever practices sin is of the devil. That's equivalent to being a slave to sin because you are of the devil. That's what he's saying. So when these people walk around and ask you, do you sin? Do you sin today? Aren't you a sinner? Don't you sin? You do everything perfect? No, you are a sinner. You sin. And once you answer, I am a sinner, I do sin, you are automatically saying, I am of the devil and I practice what the devil wants me to do. Quit speaking such madness over yourself, calling yourself a son of God or in the body of Christ. You can't be telling people you practice sin, because we found out that means you're of the devil. That means you are a slave to sin, which is all things Christ is not. That means by default, you're not what you say you are. You are a son of the devil. But let's keep going on. For I say to you that everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. So we see the captivity they were in. And it says, the slave does not remain in the house forever. The son remains forever. See, the son, he has an inheritance. The slave was actually supposed to be let go during the time of Jubilees and etc. So, but that's another story for another day. But the son remains forever. He has an inheritance. So if the son sets you free, you will be free indeed. So we find out that they had, what was this going on? They was a slave to sin. So we find out who have them captive now. Sin has them captive. And Christ, according to First John, that's why Christ was manifested to destroy the works of the devil. But how did Christ say it? If the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. So once you put them both together, the Son setting you free is equivalent to him destroying the works of the devil. Get it? Him setting you free is equivalent to him destroying the works of the devil. A person who practices sin is equivalent to them being of the devil. All right? So here's Romans now 6. Romans 6, as Paul explained everything, or Paul said everything the Messiah said. He don't have his own doctrine. And when he said something of his own accord, he will let it be known, this is me saying this. So here's Paul explaining the same scenario. Romans 6:16. Do you not know? In fact, let's go to verse 15. What then? Are we to sin because we are not under the law, but under grace? By no means. Do you not know that if you present yourselves to anyone as obedient slaves, you are slaves of the one whom you obey, either of sin, which leads to death, or of obedience, which leads to righteousness. So, what is the whole resurrection about? Being resurrected from the dead? Sin leads to death. Obedience leads to righteousness. And let's keep reading. But thanks be to God that you who were once slaves of sin have become obedient from the heart to the standard of teaching to which you were committed, and having been set free from sin, have become slaves of righteousness. And then he comes back and say, I am speaking in human terms because of your natural limitations. He's saying you guys can't understand the spiritual talk right now, so I got to break it down to you in human terms. That's what he did with the resurrection from the dead. He was breaking it to them in human natural terms with natural limitations because they wasn't able to obtain the spiritual aspect yet. And some people are still like that today. He says, for just as you once presented your members as slaves to impurity and to lawlessness, leading to more lawlessness, so now present your members as slaves to righteousness, leading to sanctification. For when you were slaves of sin, you were free in regard to righteousness. But what fruit were you getting at that time from the things of which you are now ashamed? For the end of those things is death. So, Paul is explaining, same thing the Messiah was explaining. You guys needed to be redeemed. You were slaves to sin. So Christ came to end that captivity. But when could the Jews receive that redemption? When could let's go to Galatians, I think it's Galatians 4. Galatians 4. Let's start at verse number 1. I mean that the heir, as long as he is a child, is no different from a slave, though he is the owner of everything. But he is under guardians and managers until the date set by his father. In the same way, see, now he's using this as an analogy. In the same way, we also, when we were children, were enslaved to the elementary principles of the world. So, what type of captivity did those that followed what Moses brought endure? What were they enslaved to? What were the elemental principles of the world that kept them enslaved? Well, we're going to find out. Verse 4. But when the fullness of time had come, that means it's time for something new now. The cup is at the brim. God sent forth his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. So now the Lord had to, now we found out in John, 1 John, that the Lord came to destroy the works of the devil. That's equivalent to redeeming, buying back those that's under the law. Now we're going to find out why the ones under the law, because they were supposed to have the best of the best. We're going to find out why they had to be redeemed. What was going on with this law that was having a negative effect on Israel? Well, we go to 1 Corinthians 15, verse 56. The sting of death is sin. Now, this is when you're supposed to think about this in a way as something relatable. Something relatable, right? We're going to look at the word sting. 1 Corinthians 15:56. Sting. That is to sting, to prick, or goad. So let's just think about a bee stinging you. I think we all have probably been bit by a fire ant or been stung by a bee and etc. So let's just look at it like a bee. Let's say that the bee represents death. And when that bee land on you and sting you, let's say it's a bee and not a wasp. When that bee lands on you and sting you and leave his stinger in you, think about that feeling that you feel after that stinger hits you, that feeling, that aching feeling, that represents sin. See, it's not, this is why Paul, remember, Paul said he's speaking natural limitation, natural limited terms. And with these natural limited terms, it's supposed to be something that you can relate to so you can understand what he's trying to explain as naturally as possible. So the stinger isn't sin. The feeling of the pain is the sin. So sin, when death is around, because remember, death was reigning at that time. So when death was around, the the sting, the effect of it was around as well. So now, and I'm going to explain, biblical death, not what people want it to be today. Biblical death is separation, right? Separation from the Lord. That's biblical death. So when you're separated from the Lord, sin affects you. Now, sin tried to affect the Messiah, but he wasn't separated from the Lord. In fact, he used the words of Torah to defeat Satan in flesh. That's what Matthew 4 is showing us. But let's say the people, they fail. They're like the first Adam. They fail the test, the inward test, and they love the world so much they start feeling the negative effects of that sin. Their minds start warping. They get depressed, aggression. They start uh uh not evolving, but what's the opposite of evolving? That's what they start doing. uh, I call it regression. They start feeling unnatural, not themselves. Something's wrong, attacked, and etc. Right? So this is the effect of sin. Now, this is the next statement. And the power of sin is the law. Sin doesn't work if it doesn't have anything to be contrasted to. So now that they had the holy word, sin used that against them. This is how Paul is using this as a personification. He's saying, in other words, he's saying when a person of that old covenant, because that's what he's dealing with right now, when they start violating the law, it start proliferating until they become like madmen. They become like beasts. That's what he's saying. They're like beasts now. The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. So, as long as the law was around, sin always had power. As long as sin always had power, death could always harm. So death harmed, sin, death harmed, being outside of God, harmed. It created sin in people, and sin proliferated because it had a justice system to be used against it. So, what does the Lord have to do in order to stop this whole entire system of sin? Well, we have it in Luke 21. Luke 21, I want to skip down first and go to the actual verse. Luke 21, verse number, let me see here. It's going to be verse number 28. Now, when these things begin to take place, straighten up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. So he's explaining to the disciples, when these things that I have stated to you begin to take place. So it's not ending, it's beginning. He tells them to straighten up and raise up their heads. We know raise up your head is a idiom to not be sad, right? Uh be grateful, be hopeful, and etc. Raise your heads because your redemption is drawing near. So, in other words, when it's beginning, when these things are beginning, your redemption is drawing near. Beginning. So when those things is over with, their redemption cannot be drawing near anymore. Their redemption has to be found. They had to be redeemed. Now, we know that sin is the reason why they were sold. So getting rid of sin will be the reason why they are redeemed or bought back. Now, we know according to the law, which was a shadow of the good things to come. And that's one thing that I got to make a statement for, because people abuse what's being stated in Hebrews 10. We're going to go to Hebrews 10 real fast, and then we're going to go right back to the law. This is what the author of Hebrews is actually saying, because people, they abuse these verses and make it be something else. They be like, oh, see, Christ came to do away with the law of sacrifice. Yeah, that's what he came to do away with. He came to do away with the law of sacrifice, and then they start reading these verses. This is not what this. Let's read it real fast. For since the law has but a shadow of the good things to come, instead of the true form of these realities. So he's saying that the law is a shadow. So out of that, them coming together, doing these feasts, them having a good holy convocation, the celebration, the family and the friends, enjoyment, the laughter, the blowing of the trumpets, the singing, the dancing, the eating, the drinking, the having fun. He said that is just a shadow of the things to come. It's not the true reality, it's just the shadow. Now let's keep going on. It says this: it can never, by the same sacrifices that are continually offered every year, make perfect those who draw near. So, what sacrifices was offered every year continuously? See, we're talking about a gathering, not just no regular old sacrifices like the daily sacrifices and etc. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a gathering. There was only 3 times that the children of Israel, all the males, were supposed to come to Jerusalem. 3 times. So they were supposed to do those 3 feasts yearly. Now, he's explaining one of those feasts. Let's continue reading to see which feast he's talking about. Otherwise, would they not have ceased to be offered, since the worshipers have been once being cleansed? Which feast, which convocation, which gathering cleansed the nation of Israel? Let's keep reading. Would no longer have any consequences, consciousness, I said consequence, consciousness of sins. But in these sacrifices, there is a reminder of sins every year. For it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. Which feast are we talking about here? Which feast was meant to cleanse Israel and take away sins? Well, let me give you a clue. Leviticus 16, verse number 8. And the Lord shall cast lots over the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord, and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall present the goat on which the lot fell for the Lord, and use it as a sin offering. But the goat which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement over it, that it may be sent away into the wilderness to Azazel. Aaron shall present the bull as a sin offering for himself, and shall make atonement for himself and for his house. He shall kill the bull as a sin offering for himself. Now let's go right back to Hebrews. Hebrews 10, verse number 4. For it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. Get it? This is talking about the atonement. See, people use this right here to talk about, oh, see, Jesus came to do away with sacrifices. Let me show you right here. Hebrews 10 is about sacrifices. This is talking about atonement. So the weird breakdowns that people give, that's not what it's talking about. And then he comes and says this right here in verse 5. Consequently, when Christ came into the world, he said, sacrifices and offerings you have not desired, but a body you have prepared for me. And burnt offerings and sin offerings you have taken no pleasure. Then I said, I have come to do your will, O God, as it is written of me in the scroll of the book. And people don't understand. This is definitely a quote from Psalms. It's not talking about David. And as Christ stated in the New Testament, not my will, but your will. I have come to do your will. I mean, what more can we say? But let's keep going on. When he said above, you have neither desired nor taken pleasure in sacrificing offerings and burnt offerings and sin offerings, these are offered according to the law. Then he added, behold, I have come to do thy will. He does away with the first in order to establish the second. In other words, that's talking to, in fact, let's go to verse number 12. But when Christ had offered for all time a single sacrifice for sins, he sat down at the right hand of God. What is he talking about right there? That Christ came to do that simple sacrifice for offering of sins one time? Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53, verse number 10. Yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. And is it Isaiah 49? Isaiah 49, verse number, let me see here, 7 and 8. Thus says the Lord, the Redeemer of Israel. Let me go down to 8. I have answered you in a day of salvation. I have helped you. I will keep you and give you as a covenant to the people. See, that's what that's talking about. That's all dealing with atonement. That's dealing with atonement. And I know in Hebrews 10, people are going to jump down. Let me see here, because I just passed it. Hebrews 10, people are going to jump down and say, see right here, it names all those sacrifices. When it said you have neither desired nor taken pleasure in sacrifices and offerings and burnt offerings and sin offerings, yes, the Lord did not take place. He wasn't pleased in any of these sacrifices. But in Hebrews 10 and 1 through verse number 4, they're talking about the atonement. Verse 5, atonement. So, there you have it. But the point is, the redemption was going to come through the Messiah. But, first thing first, a specific type of atonement had to occur. So that's the Lord doing atonement right there, right? So the Lord made atonement right there. And once we go to Leviticus, let's go there, which is the shadow now. We go into the shadow. In Leviticus 29, it tells us, then shall they sound the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the day of atonement, you shall sound the trumpet throughout all your land. And then verse 10, when each of you shall return to his property, and each one of you shall return to his clan, that 50th year shall be a jubilee unto you. And as you keep reading, it starts talking about The redemption. The redemption of the, let me look, verse 25. If your brother becomes poor and sells part of his property, then his nearest redeemer shall come and redeem his brother, redeem what his brother has sold. And if no one to redeem it, and if a man has no one to redeem it, then himself becomes prosperous and finds sufficient means to redeem it, let him calculate the years that he has sold it, and etc. Let's keep going on. Let's see if we can find any more. Verse number 31. But the houses of the villages that have no wall around them shall be classified with the fields of the land. They may be redeemed, and they shall be released in the Jubilee. Is there any more? Verse 32. As for the cities of the Levites, which are the priests, the Levites may redeem at any time in the cities they possess. Is there any more? Let's see here. We just said 25. Verse number 47. If a stranger or sojourner with you becomes rich and your brother besides him becomes poor and sells himself to the stranger or sojourner with you or to a member of the stranger's clan, then after he is sold, he may be redeemed. One, his brother may redeem him, or his uncle or cousin may redeem him, or a closest relative from his clan may redeem him, or if he grows rich, he may redeem himself. Verse 51. If there are still many years left, he shall pay proportionately for his redemption some of the sales price. 52. And if there remain but a few years until the year of Jubilee, he shall calculate and pay for his redemption in proportion to his years of service. So that's all of 25. Can't you see that the Jubilee is dealing with redemption? It's a time of redemption. So when Christ tells them in Luke 21, your redemption draws near, he's leading toward the final Jubilee, the final atonement occurring. So he's telling them the final atonement is going to occur. And then we know that Isaiah put that final atonement around 70 AD when Jerusalem was going to be destroyed. Now, here should be the big question. Christ was the atonement. So if Christ was the atonement and he died about 40 years before 70 AD, what redemption is they talking about if the redemption is indeed the dealing with the atonement? Well, this is somewhat of a mystery, but not a mystery. Let me show you how to look at this. There's a specific type of atonement that had to occur 70 AD outside of the atonement that Christ did. So this is a mystery. That other atonement, the complete atonement, when all things was finally atoned for. Let me show you that in Numbers. Numbers 35, verse 33. You shall not pollute the land in which you live, for blood pollutes the land, and no atonement can be made for the land for the blood that is shed in it, except by the blood of the one who shed it. So Christ had already done one atonement. But this is the final atonement that had to occur, which was the land atonement. This is what they were waiting on for the completion of the atonement. Now, where's the proof? Well, here's one of it right here. If you go to Deuteronomy 32, dealing with the Song of Moses. This is what the Song of Moses says right here in Deuteronomy 32, verse number 43. And let me read it from let me see. Let me read it from the World English Bible first, so you can get the understanding. It says this: Rejoice, ye nations, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants. He will take vengeance on his adversaries and will make atonement for his land and for his people. So there's atonement for the people, there's atonement for the land. Christ did the atonement for the people, so now guess what we're waiting on? The atonement for the land. So that's your Numbers 35, 33. So now, let's go back to Luke 21. In Luke 21, verse number, what was it at? 28, when he told them, now when these things begin to take place, straighten up and raise your heads because your redemption is drawing near. What is he talking about? The redemption that comes with the land atonement. See, they had to leave the old covenantal land had to be atoned for in order for the new covenant land to arrive. He couldn't put the new covenant land on top of a old dirty land. Get it? He couldn't put the new covenant land on top of a filthy old covenant land. So he had to cleanse the old covenant land in order for the new covenant land to rest on top of it. So, what is Christ telling them in Luke 21? He's telling them how the old covenant land was going to be atoned for. See, that's your Luke 21, 24. Then they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led captive unto all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. That's him making atonement. That's him cleansing his old covenant land. That's him getting rid of all. See, remember, if a person shed blood inside of the land, their blood must be shed inside of that same land in order to make atonement. So when they said to Christ, let his blood be on us and our children. When they persecuted the church, let the blood be upon us and our children. That's what they're saying. So this is what's happening in Luke 21, 24. It's a land atonement. Look, there will be great distress upon the earth, which is gay, which means land, and wrath against this people. That's your Deuteronomy 32. That's your Song of Moses being played out. Luke 21, 22, for these are the days of vengeance. Those same days of vengeance is found in Deuteronomy 32, the Song of Moses that spoke about the land atonement. See, verse 20. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by army, then know that its desolation has come near. Why did Jerusalem have to be destroyed? Because all of the bloodshed that was inside of Jerusalem. That's talking about a land atonement. Jerusalem being destroyed, which happened 70 AD. But we can go even deeper to that. We're almost done. I swear, y'all, we're almost done. If you go to Revelation 15, what are they saying in Revelation 15 and 3? And they sang the song of Moses, the servant of God. What is the song of Moses about? The land atonement. What is Revelation about? Jerusalem being destroyed. I know people want it to be about America or some other nonsense, but it's about Jerusalem being destroyed. You see it right here in verse 1? The wrath of God is finished. And they sung the song of Moses. What does Luke 21 say about the land of Jerusalem? It says this, verse number, was it 23? For there will be great distress on the earth and wrath against this people. Who's bringing the wrath against the people? None other than God. That's the wrath of God right there. So this is going to put the icing on the cake, then I will be done. If you go to Matthew 23, this is what Matthew 23 says, showing you that this is a land atonement again. Matthew 23, verse number 34. Therefore I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, so that may on you may come all the righteous bloodshed. See, that's atonement language on earth, from the blood, atonement language, of righteous Abel to the blood, atonement language, of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. So if they murdered between the sanctuary and the altar, what does the land atonement say? Their blood has to be shed in the same land they shed the blood in. So by default, if the scribes and Pharisees murdered Zechariah in Jerusalem, the scribes and Pharisees had to be murdered in Jerusalem. See, right here? Truly I say all these things will come upon this generation. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones them. So if Jerusalem killed anybody, right? If Jerusalem killed anybody, especially the prophets and stones, if Jerusalem killed anybody, what does Numbers 35 say? Numbers 35:33 says this: You shall not pollute the land in which you live, for blood pollutes the land. So if Jerusalem killed somebody, they just polluted the land. And no atonement can be made for the land. So Jerusalem cannot be atoned for except by the blood of the one who shed it, except by the people in Jerusalem that killed it. So that's what the Bible is about. That when we say all things have been fulfilled, that's what we're talking about. When he said redemption draws near, because when Jerusalem is getting ready to fall, then the final atonement is getting ready to occur. That's what we are talking about. That's what the Bible is talking about. That's why we tell people 70 AD is when all biblical prophecies were fulfilled, because that was the final land atonement. That was the final jubilee that had a judgment. There is no land atonement today because there is no old covenant today. There is no old covenant in which the people have to be vindicated for dealing with that covenant today. That doesn't exist. It's make believe when people say it. So when people, oh yeah, this will be my last thing I forgot. Y'all just Google this. Ezekiel 37, Ezekiel 38, Ezekiel 39, and the time of Esther. The scholars are literally telling us now that Ezekiel 38, 39 is about the time of Esther. So the futurist that's looking for Gog and Magog, they take another L because the scholars are now saying, hey, that actually happened in the past and not the present. Thank you all for listening in. We got a dude named Don that wants to speak. We'll let him come up, and y'all gonna be on about 20 more minutes. I got work in the mornings. Thank y'all for listening in. I'm gonna end it.